All right, guys and gals of the movement world, our deep dive onto our 2021 Mover of the Year, Jonathan Taylor, continues. In this week, we fast forward another week. Last week, we had, or in our last game, we had San Francisco 49ers week 7 at San Francisco in a little bit of rain. Now, this week, they're back in the confines, they're comfortable confines. In Indianapolis, back into the dome, back onto the field turf, and back where Jonathan Taylor is truly most comfortable. Now, as we saw in last week's video, or the video from last week, as well as we're about to see when they played the Buffalo Bills, also a movement play of the week that we investigated earlier this season, Jonathan Taylor is equally adept at being able to continue to solve movement problems under changing conditions. And of course, that's a hallmark of dexterity, Bernstein's idea of movement dexterity, which guides our mover of the year, helps to inform our mover of the year analysis, particularly his definition of dexterity, the ability to solve any emerging movement problem in any situation, in any condition. And is what you're finding within these videos, this deep dive into Jonathan Taylor in his movement skill capabilities and qualities, specifically those qualities and how they're allowing him and assisting him to express movement skill in the fashion that he is. With those dexterous movement qualities, we're seeing it across situation here. In this deep dive, game by game, we're seeing across situations his movement problem solving. And again, we're going to see that here again today. So let's go ahead and jump into it on this video. We're only going to look at one play of Jonathan Taylor versus the Tennessee Titans in week 8, the 5-2 Titans, obviously the AFC's #1 seed by the end of the season, and of course the Colts here, their division rival, playing them for the first time in this respective season. So when we watch this play, we're only going to get to see it in one view. So we are going to watch it a couple of times through, if we could, in order to be able to see it and to see it as clearly as we possibly can. Again, remember, I apologize for only being able to have the sideline view here. It is because I cannot show you the all 22 copyrighted version, the all 22 specifically from the end zone view, which I believe that we'd see some other things happening here. So again, at 100% speed, and you might be thinking to yourself, Sean, why are you showing us this when he doesn't actually score? Obviously, we're going to get to the bottom of that. We're going to be able to highlight some really cool, nuanced, skillful things that he does here, as well as maybe some things he could have done to potentially score. And let's go ahead and watch it one more time before we actually go into the 50% speed and then walk us through, or I will walk you through, as to what I'm seeing and what I'm picking up as Jonathan Taylor solves this respective problem in his unique and functional fashion. So even though he doesn't score, there are going to be some things that you'll see, hopefully, that allow you to see the true functionality. I just realized the closed captions were on there. I apologize for that. You'll see the true functionality of the movement solution. Again, remember, a functional adaptive movement solution is really one that is practical, it's relevant, and it fits the respective problem for that performer in all the constraints and the way that they're coalescing at that moment in time. So 50% speed, let's look at a few things here as to what Jonathan Taylor may be attuning to and what he might be adapting around. Now we see him right away. Again, we've seen him a lot in shotgun, but he is obviously very, very well versed on being able to run out of any formation and being asked to do any number of things from those formations as well. But we have been seeing a lot through traffic and a lot between the tackles, as we probably hopefully would highlight across these videos in our deep dive. Again, those across situations, it doesn't matter if he's being asked to run between the tackles, whether it's left or right, inside zone, outside zone, anything, even in some of these dive orient type of plays where he's waiting for things to set up He is masterful. He is skillful at allowing openings to be there for him when he needs them to be there in a very Le'Veon Bell, as I highlighted in week seven's video, very patient type of fashion. As we see him here, I wanted to actually pause this just a little bit before, so I was a little late. Let me see if I can grab it for us. You can see right now, some backs would actually take this gap in this affordance, this opening. And in fact, I could have potentially seen Jonathan Taylor taking this type of gap or affordance, right? But it all depends on when he's seeing this, as well as what he is picking up and what it is that he prefers to read. Remember, affordances, meaning opportunities to act, are going to invite at varying levels, and they are going to be individual and frame dependent. So individual dependent, who's looking at it, what action capabilities do they have, their intrinsic dynamics, their tendencies upon perceiving and acting upon the world, as well as then the frame dependence. When do they see that affordance? And how does that affordance landscape, that landscape of opportunities, actually call for them to behave in specific ways? So, something that we must remember when we see a gap such as this, which we feel that he could potentially take. It all depends on when he's seeing that gap and when he's what he's reading. Now, my guess is obviously he is looking for where it is that he ends up adapting, this hole that is going to open up behind his all pro guard, and with his all pro guard right here in Quentin Nelson, number 56. Quentin Nelson currently engaged, if I can get our arrows out of the mix, currently engaged right here with, I believe that's number 51, linebacker for the Tennessee Titans. So 56 and 51. My guess is Jonathan Taylor has really learned in these last 2 years within the National Football League to cue in on, to read the movement behaviors of, again, an all-pro guard, a guard who here will give him a lot of information in regards to where he's taking a defender and how Jonathan Taylor can operate, how he can coordinate, control, and act in accordance to what opportunities are potentially going to open up. But it's here, if I can get one step further, remember I talked in week 7 against the 49ers, Jonathan Taylor coming in a little lower, closer to the ground. We still see him in this stagger stance with right leg forward. Okay, look at his right leg here, look at his left leg, sort of coiled and angled in a way that would take him in an optimal world in this direction. You can already tell his intentions. Remember, movement solutions and that movement problem solving process is going to be intertwined, interwoven relations between perceptions, cognitions, and intentions, and potentially the emergent decision making, and then ultimately how one is acting. All of this is a holistic, integrated movement problem solving process. But one's intentions, again, will scaffold what information one is picking up and what opportunities are going to be there that maybe are going to be a little bit more attractive. Because if we really think about what Jonathan Taylor could do here, he could, if he had the opportunity, to bounce it right here to the outside. And again, we don't see that a lot from a Jonathan Taylor, maybe to the same degree as we would some other running backs. Maybe a Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley back in the mover of the year days. Delvin Cook, a little bit more, probably a little earlier on now. Delvin is a little bit more accustomed to traffic navigation, specifically between the tackles. This is where Jonathan Taylor feels really comfortable. Now, he has a stacked offensive line in front of him, so that certainly plays into and factors into that. But here, again, I'm going to get this off of there and maybe take us one step back if I could. I want to speak to this of what I feel he could potentially add, because it's going to be relevant here, but it's going to be relevant in another case once he gets down the field a little bit. Here he's coming in that lower, more squatted, more coiled position where he could go right or left, to his right or to his left, but this low coil to where he can still move from side to side in a lateral fashion, sort of swaying and moving with where the problem calls for him to go. We're going to see it right here. We're going to see it a second time. We're actually going to see it 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. So once he gets in this sway position, he basically just allows the problem to guide him as to where he needs to go in a very Bruce Lee water-like fashion. Remember, water can flow or it can crash. You're sort of moving along with what the problem is asking of you. So he takes these couple steps forward out of this. We can see him actually put his hand out for haptic or touch perceptual information. He puts his hand out here. I wish we could zoom in. Okay, but if I could get my spotlight, look at where his hand is here. We'll often see him really trusting the affordances he's picking up from Quentin Nelson specifically. All his offensive linemen, he's very touch oriented, he's very driven around this haptic perceptual information. Combining that with his visual perceptual information. Remember, it's very, very rarely one information source that is guiding the coordination and control of that movement. It's usually a bunch of different information sources combined together that is going to, one is going to utilize to couple their movement actions in relation to. So he sort of goes along with the flow of that which what the problem is asking of him. Haptic information along with Quentin Nelson. And there he just allows Nelson's body movement and momentum from that body movement to push right into 50. Again, I think it's 51. Yeah, right there. And he just kind of pushes them aside to then just move with the flow from left to right as Nelson's body goes down, and then 51 just kind of pushes past, goes past. We can see him right here. I wish my clicker would just basically take us in reverse, but it doesn't work that way, obviously, on this YouTube. This is a low coiled position, but I could see him lower and having more opportunities to act. Okay. Moving on from that first initial local movement problem, that first one, and then now looking at the successive affordances that could be present here. Okay, he just kind of goes through that side step, and again, right into acceleration. Look at this gap that we see. Again, here's the first down marker. The gap basically is existing there. We got some flow of traffic from defensive backs here and here that maybe got sucked too far up into thinking that Jonathan Taylor was going to end up somewhere over here. Okay, they're going with the flow of the play. Both guys over pursue and get themselves too far up in this area. We can see 25 is still acting in this way while Jonathan Taylor is going that way. We can see, I think this might be Kevin Bayard, got himself too sucked up over here. So now he's got to try and bail back over to get into the path of Jonathan Taylor. And so if we miss that, if you guys miss that, remember, interacting component parts, a complex movement problem, all of that creates the context, which shapes the content. Okay. So if we did miss it, let's go ahead and key ourselves in on maybe those two respective defensive backs where they could potentially be going. Right here, we see a guy coming this way. And you're going to watch 25 also get himself up over here. Okay. So we got some guys who get themselves out of position. This happens to be Baird. This would have been the other safety. You can see that everybody feels as though Jonathan Taylor is going to be possibly going over here, okay? Or at least somewhere right straight down the tunnel of the hashes or created by the hashes. But he just adapts, goes with the flow, and now all of a sudden this huge gap opens up. Okay. As this gap opens up and as he gets kind of to about the 13, 12 yard line, we can see again acceleration being called for him and from him. And when he sees it, there is zero hesitation. His movement solutions are tightly coupled between perceptions, intentions, decisions, and actions, constantly intertwined and interwoven and constantly unfolding in that way. So we see his information detection again for this respective gap that exists. Now it's going to be about right here, but we see a couple of key specifying information sources which are going to be relevant. A player moving into that gap. Of course, right now at this moment in time, Jonathan Taylor pretty much has this, even though he's still about 5 yards away from the first down marker. That is a guiding, shaping local intention at this moment. And then, of course, we have some specifying information sources right here in this dyadic relationship, his wide receiver with the defensive back, who are going to act in a performer or blocker and defender type of performance dyadic relationship. So as he hits the gas, and this would be number 11 and I think number 21 here, and with number 37 moving toward the wide side of the field now. Again, what is he attuning to? What is he adapting around? We see a true skilled in intentionality. And when I say skilled intentionality, I'm using this idea of an openness and a responsiveness to a rich landscape or a wide landscape of potential affordances. So he sort of slows himself to wait for things to unfold. Let's watch this, okay? Movement, ownership, speed. He gets through this first local movement problem, hits the gas pedal 1, 2, 3, and now he's going to slow himself slightly to allow 11 to interact with this defensive back out here. Skilled intentionality, openness, and responsiveness. As he gets closer, let's look at this perception action, okay? He goes from left to right and back to left again. Look at his head and eyes. Watch his head and eyes here. Boom. He looks right over to the right. It's just a quick glance. That quick glance is enough to take in information. Where's 11? Where's the defensive back? And how could I potentially act here? Now, when he looks back left, as he already has started to, and again, I understand we have to acknowledge here that we're going frame by frame, step by step here in a 50% speed. The true like chess versus checkers of this is obviously this unfolding at high speed and at the speeds of very, very, very short moments in time. That tells you how quickly a skilled and dexterous mover is actually attuning to specifying information sources. Now it's here, like I said earlier, that I believe he had an opportunity to score. But this information is unfolding and unfolding quickly. But look at him right here. Looking down this gap, we're going to see him look from left to right. Watch him look to his right there. And now he's going to look right back left. He sees it, and of course that I happen to click too many times and it goes off the video. He sees this too late to actually go where it is that he could potentially go, because obviously you don't have to be a skilled mover necessarily to see what is out here, what could be calling for him. Remember, this landscape of affordances is constantly emerging and decaying, and doing so very rapidly, very dynamically. It's constantly changing. And again, it's always frame dependent. So as 37 gets closer to him, he sort of slows himself and waits for that interaction to unfold and open up. If he would have trusted what his eyes were picking up here just a little bit before this, I think he could have hit the gas pedal, should have hit the gas pedal, and ran towards that space of green grass out here at near the 10 right now. Okay, right here, to be able to put his foot down and again get into this lower, wider position. Even though he's moving at higher speeds now, he's further downfield. He is at more of an ownership speed. He's not at maximum speed, even though he put down 2 or 3 quick acceleration steps. I believe here, if he were to widen out a tad, get a little lower, he gives himself an opportunity to really coil in and out of a position, maybe stab his left foot into the ground and project himself out towards this space of grass, or to even in a bilateral fashion, bring both feet in more of a parallel position, or even as we've seen him do in the past, be in a more staggered stance and be able to move from left to right, whether it's in that jump cutting fashion that we've seen as a go-to strategy from him, or whether it would be in more of an outside foot power cutting type of fashions to go from left to right to push out at this angle. I think it is there. But again, this is all in hindsight. And again, this is happening in a retrospective way. But again, also, information guides the movement, and it all depends on when and how he's picking up that information. Okay. It's easy for me to say in retrospect, but right there, when he has that little left to right kind of shuffle, it's kind of a pseudo modified shuffle jump cut. I don't really even know what to call it because it's kind of adapted in that way. Watch it right here. When he hits this, he could have and should have come on going over here. I mean, again, in hindsight is 2020. It's really easy to see. And of course, people catch up to him. He goes down at the 1.5, 2 yard line then as a result. But hopefully you guys are seeing that which what I'm after here, what gap or weakness might still exist, and how we might be able to constrain to afford to channel a movement solution that would be even more functional. But man, look at this. He's constantly taking information. The thing I love about Jonathan Taylor is he is constantly attuning. He's constantly becoming sensitive in a really authentic way. He's organizing his perceptual degrees of freedom and utilizing that as he acts to act in new or more functional, the most functional possible way that he can at that moment. But he could have and should have looked right yet again and found himself with an opportunity to act out towards the sideline. And he probably right here would have found himself in pay dirt if he not only would have gone this direction, but also looked in this direction. We can see that yes, this individual right here is in a position to potentially move and close that off, but he also has Pittman, his own guy coming up and interacting here. And I believe that Jonathan Taylor does get the edge here and does get to the pylon, especially with this amount of space to operate in. You never know once he goes there, especially with his constant adaptability within adaptability, how he would continue to act. I think he has a different opportunity there to score. Yet, nonetheless, what we see is still a first down. We still see a complex movement problem solved. And we also see that affordances are individual and frame dependent. And again, who am I to second guess the individual who I believe is the most dexterous mover currently doing it? So for this latest deep dive here into our mover of the year for 2021, I'm Sean Mishkov. This is Football Beyond the Stats, and I will see you again on our next deep dive video.